All right, we're all set. And I will
Well,
spotlight you, Liz. Give me one
okay.
sec. Oh, go ahead.
All right. Well, so for everyone who's joining us on YouTube, welcome. This is a session talking about bidding for JemCon. And the first thing that we need to know is that a bid is not, I'm going to put up $10,000 and we'll see if somebody has a higher bid. It's not like that kind of thing. It's a document that you put together explaining your reasons for wanting to host JemCon and your qualifications and your plans and things like that. So, there's I know that I want to just introduce people. We have Davide, who has been on staff and participating in GemCon for a long time. Rachel, who hosted GemCon 2018 and is going to host 2023. Ket, who hosted 2008. And then Damon's here to learn some stuff. And I'm Liz. I hosted in 2005 and 2020 and 2022. So I'm a little tired. Um, so we can go through the bid document, but I wanted to first open it up for any questions or any kind of directions that especially Damon might want to go.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for taking your time to educate us with this. I am new to the con bid process, so I did print out the document on the site. Thank you very much for that link of the who, why, who, where, when, what, how. So a couple questions. I'm sure that you'll cover them, but one of the first ones that I had off the bat is if you are planning to bid for a host city, do you then have to staff it, or does GemCon remain staffed and then it travels?
Basically, the only quick answer is you have to staff it. Yes, you are building your own staff. Now, there are a lot of people who kind of float from year to year and just volunteer kind of automatically, but you want to confirm with each of them, anyone that you're interested in. You can go to Facebook, to social media to say, hey, anybody want to be in my staff? You can contact individuals that you know that you want to work with. But the staff that GemCon provides is basically, we have Ankur as treasurer and registration coordinator. So he takes care of all the finances and stuff, which is very nice. And I'm there as kind of just general, whatever you need me to be. And other than that, that's the only official staff we have. Oh, and Ankur is also doing the website and has some assistants who do that.
I am also more than willing to help any interested hosts out with guests and any media needs. That is something I'm happy to help with.
Yep, there are all sorts of people who will be very angry, and also if you win the bid and you get there on site, you will get on site and you'll find 7 or 8 people going, well, I'm here to help, and I'm here to do this, and I'm going to go set up the registry. There's a whole bunch of people there to help. So it's staffing is very important, and especially you want to make sure that you have some very strategic roles specifically covered, but there will be hands coming to help. I'm just trying to get my notes here. Got 6 devices. There we go. Okay. All right. So that's my basic view on that question. Anybody have any other input on that? Okay. More questions.
A quick follow-up actually on that with trying to find people and the social media piece. So to give you an example, like I am not good with the fashions. I have no sewing skills. It is just not my cup of tea, not my skill set. But I follow people on the Facebook groups and the Gem fan groups, and I just spotted some people who I knew from prior Gem Cons that they did cosplaying. I didn't even realize they did doll clothes, but I saw them post pictures in the group, and I instantly reached out and messaged them and said, hey, would you be interested in helping out with the fashion for Rhode Island? They were so excited to be asked. It was great because we got new people involved to help out with the fashion. And it wasn't an official announcement, hey, we need people to help with the fashions. I literally found them because I just saw a picture that they posted on like one of the Facebook groups. So there really are a lot of hidden pockets of people willing to help out with things. And it's a matter of just doing a little bit of digging. And one thing that I think is helpful to keep in mind is you'll have people helping out throughout the year leading up to the event, and those might be different people than who are able to actually be on site during the weekend. Both groups of people are very instrumental in ensuring that GemCon runs smoothly. Like we have people who, for whatever reason, they just can't physically attend for that weekend, but they're doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff leading up to it. Then we have other people who can't really help out as much during the year, but once they're there on site, like Liz said, they're ready to go, gonna help you get everything set up. So I think it's good to think of it, people to help out with things during the year, and then also like your core people who are willing to help out on site. So that would be the only thing I'd add to it with the social media, and then thinking of your staff and like year-round staff versus on-site staff.
And I will add, one more thing in my experience, even though I've never hosted a GemCon myself. I'm just, I was in a panel in my second GemCon in 2011 about, dubbing and voiceover. We had so much fun. And there was something that, of course, required a little bit of planning before, both from the staff of GemCon, but also about the attendees themselves, because I required in advance for them to send me, Gem lines in their specific language. It was quite a unique convention, being in Europe, where we had people, from different countries with different languages. It was the perfect opportunity to have a voiceover class, and a dubbing class. But that was planned. But at the same time, like I was saying, just before you logged in, I live between two countries, so I can never really commit myself too much in advance. But then I'm one of those guys that, last minute, I'll always, when I register, I said I'm willing to volunteer, and whatever needs to be done, I just happen to do it, whether it's helping with a display room, or even taking out empty glasses or empty cups from the rooms, because you just want to keep it nice, and if needed, well, I would do that too.
Okay, so beyond staffing, did you have any other specific questions, Damon?
No, but I not particularly.
Okay.
If I just want to maybe run this so that I maybe have an idea of,
Yeah.
because putting on an event, it's a special event, and is its own thing. I do have, an idea. I mean, I was in hotels for 15 years, so
Aha.
and so, and also too, and on a, committees and organizations. So this feels like, if you're the chair, then you definitely have to get your committees going. And then I'm sure that this might, so I do have a question. As
Yeah.
organically as I talk it out, things happen. So what would normally be if someone wins the bid and they then become the con chair, what is typically the commitment throughout the year of planning?
At the very beginning, we're a little late this year with the process. So normally we would be aiming for a couple months earlier, but frankly, everything has just been COVID and pandemic have just messed everything up, specifically have messed me and my schedule and my brain up. So normally what would happen is you start working with the current year's GemCon. I mean, if you might already be on staff, but we want to get you incorporated into seeing how the nuts and bolts behind the scenes work. So maybe just attending some staff meetings, maybe taking on a role, whatever kind of commitment fits your schedule and your capacities right now. That's kind of the first thing that happens. At the beginning, you're getting your hotel. So that's going to be, you know, a little, since you've worked with hotels, you know what's going on. So that's going to save you a lot of time. Um, Getting your hotel set up, getting your staff in place, and getting the first pieces of publicity, you know, finding like some art for the Facebook banner, and just kind of things like that, so that when it is time to switch over, you're all ready to go. After so like the week after the actual GemCon before yours, there's going to be, you know, you'd be talking to Ankur and kind of getting the whole financial thing in focus, and then you're going to get ready to start your fashion contest, because you want to give your seamstresses and seamsters as much time as possible. You want to start looking at things like, um, how's the display going to work. um, so for the whole period, you're easily going to have 3 or 4 hours for the first couple of months a week that you're going to be thinking about it and just doing stuff. As you get closer to the date, depending on your personal organizational style and how big your staff is, that can go up quite a bit. Hello, sirens. um, the couple of weeks before GemCon, or where you're doing something every day and there you've got stuff being mailed to you and things like that. Um, it is possible, especially if you're very good at sticking to a schedule, to kind of keep your involvement down, um, by spreading everything out over the year. So it just kind of depends on how you work and the people you're working with. But it's never going to be, you know, 20 hours a week or anything like that. It's just just kind of keeping on top of things. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
That makes sense, and I think that was a question I had earlier and remembered to ask it right now.
Well, there's all sorts of stuff that we, you know, putting in the document is just going to make the document too big. And then other things that don't always occur. I wrote that thing, I don't even know how many years ago now, but I think I had a piece of it in 2011, and it needs to be rewritten again, to incorporate the the online, the Zoom element, and some other things that just have come up over the years and have changed. So, um, let's see.
You mind if I just add on to that real quick,
Sure.
Liz? One thing that I think is really helpful to keep in mind, like if you just, it's very easy to get lost in the bid document and think you have to have all these things figured out up front. There's a lot of things that'll get figured out in real time as the year kind of progresses, but the more stuff that you have buttoned up, this more smooth the smoother the year is going to go for you as a host. The main thing that you really need to have figured out prior to going into like if you were hypothetically to win the bid for 2024, the main thing you would need to have buttoned up going into GemCon 2023 is having your hotel contract signed, getting some initial artwork put together, like what Liz said, having postcards ordered to ideally bring with or send to that on-site GemCon the year prior, so we can hand it out to attendees, include it in grab bags, that sort of thing, and just have a bare bones early bird like registration site on the GemCon site, which Anchor handles, and then a very rough overview, like a teaser preview for that last day of GemCon. That's really the only buttoned up work that needs to happen going into the prior GemCon. Yes, once that GemCon's over, you are going to want to pace yourself like throughout the year. But to give you an example with the fashions, like we got some awesome new people on board for the fashions. Now that it's moving along, once a month we'll have a touch base for an hour just to check in and do I don't need to monitor, like I'm not fashion savvy. So, but there's group chats going and the connected people know who to go to for what. So that's now the fashion committee is kind of running on its own. So I think it's important just to pace yourself, but I just want to caution, like not every single question or bullet in the bid, you're not going to have an answer to all of that going into the prior JemCon, but they are questions that you do need to think about if you want to host. So that was my PSA.
Yep, and that's basically what the first two things on the bid things say. The document itself is a tool, and it is designed specifically to not only let us know what we need to know to approve a bid, but to let you know what you're getting into. Um, I tried to include details that let you know what you're getting into, basically. So, so the fun activity I had planned to start all the excitement with was the finding your hotel, but I'm guessing that you're actually pretty good at that. So how do you do we let's go through this just for fun
Okay,
since we're recording this.
sure.
So I'm gonna share my screen. Where is my share screen? Okay, I am disabled. Can you enable me to share my screen?
I will make you a co-host. Hang
Okay.
on 1 second.
Just as my cat starts making noise.
In which area are you, maybe planning to host, Damon?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and so we border Scottsdale. So Scottsdale is the land of resorts and hotels.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I'm just
And
gonna do a cat.
and so I thought that that would be financially affordable for a lot of us because it is such a conference centric economy. And Labor Day is actually a kind of a good time to come because most um, that's really not a destination for vacation and families. Most people leave, and that's the last shout before school starts. So work trips really aren't. It's a kind of a good shoulder season for hotels, even in Scottsdale. So that is to my advantage at least to to as a selling point, I would think. But it's yeah. To answer your question, long answer is Scottsdale, Phoenix, Arizona. And the weather's beautiful. So
And I would just like to say it would be lovely to get back to the West Coast.
yeah.
We have a bunch of people who have discovered JemCon in the last couple years since we were last there, which was 2017.
Okay. Yes.
Though there are a whole bunch of Californians just chomping at the bit.
Yes.
Okay, so for people who are not as savvy with hotels, one of the nice things that you've got these days is Google Maps. And so this is Google Maps of the basic Twin Cities area. So you can start this way, and all these little things here, because I selected hotels in my search, are hotels, and these are what they charge per night, and that is kind of a maximum value as of right now. Obviously, it's not with a specific date set, it's just today. So you can look at this and say, okay, this is way too much. Where do I want to look? Well, let's look at the Mall of America. So I happen to know where the Mall of America is. So we go in here and focus in a bit. There we go. There's our mall. And so you can look at these, and while room cost is not your entire thing, it does kind of give you a range. You probably aren't going to go for the $274 hotel. That's the JW Marriott Minneapolis Mall of America. That's probably going to be a little high. At the same time, this $54 one probably doesn't have any meeting space, but this gives you a way to look at stuff. And sometimes you'll find surprises that maybe you want to look at, like, oh, let's see what's over here. Great Wolf Lodge Water Park, what? And then you can click on that and go to their website and discover that they don't have any meeting space either, but they do have a water park, and it was so disappointing not to be able to host there. But so you can make quite a nice little list just from using Google Maps. And let's see, that didn't give me, let's find our JemCon 22 hotel. Where are we? But this can give you a nice geographical thing. So if you know your area really well, you can say, I want to specifically go to, you know, the DoubleTree by Hilton in St. Louis Park Place. There it is. That was a hotel that I knew. It was one that I was familiar with from some other things. I also explored, like I said, that Mall of America area. I explored downtown Minneapolis. Just kind of looked at places that I knew were good site kind of areas. So when you go to someone's website, where's their website? There we go. What you're going to look for, if they actually get you to their website, come on. Well, you're going to have to get to their website first, but you want to look for events, for weddings, for meetings, and you want to look for the spaces that they have, just rooms available. You want to look at the amenities they have, such as shuttle service to and from the airport, um, food in the area, free parking. We like free breakfast, although that seems to be much rarer these days, unfortunately. But I strongly, strongly recommend just this nice little Google Maps trick, just to kind of see what's available and get a good handle on the area that you're trying to work in. So that is my fancy trick for researching sites. Now, when you are making a list of your sites, you probably want to make kind of a spreadsheet sort of thing with cost of rooms. If they give costs for meeting space on the site before you do a proposal, you can put that down, but you might just be putting down, they have 3 ballrooms, or I know that they hosted a 6,000 person convention here in 2019 or something like that. The kind of information that you just want to be able to distinguish them one from another when you're going to their websites. It is very important when you are working with a hotel that you are able to work with a hotel. I'm gonna stop screen sharing this because it's boring after a certain point. The hotel that we did for 2022 it turned out to be a very good hotel. The staff on site was excellent. I think we had a very good experience with them. For various reasons, including all of the COVID stuff, it was extremely difficult to get them to return my calls from 2019 to 2022. It was very difficult, and it drove me absolutely out of my mind. So you want to kind of get a feel for the hotels when you contact them. If you have to, for example, some of the smaller hotels won't have an events section on their webpage, but they might actually have some space. So you're probably going to have to call them and talk to someone. The larger hotels generally are going to have everything on the website. The chains, the DoubleTrees, your Hyatts, your Hiltons, your Marriotts, probably even Holiday Inn. They'll have everything there. You can pretty much do everything online. You can check, probably they'll have a catering menu with prices. They'll probably have AV prices. They'll have floor plans. It'll be great. And then they'll have an electronic proposal that you can fill out, which is basically asking them what they are going to charge you so that you can make a decision if they're the person, the hotel you want to work with. But some smaller places, more independent places, might not have all of that tech in place, and you might just have to talk to them and work with them. My personal philosophy is that when you are looking at a hotel, you want to go with something that is going to be affordable to a lot of attendees. In some areas, that's just not possible. In the Twin Cities, I had as you saw there, I had a wide variety of prices available, and most of them are within, we didn't have hotel shuttles at that hotel, and that was not ideal, but everybody got there, and there's transit and there's Lyft and Uber and stuff. So sometimes you have to make a compromise, and I compromised to get that nice lower rate with the kind of space that we needed, because I looked in the area that had free services, free shuttle, and it was either the rooms were going to be $180 a night, uh, or they didn't have the right kind of space. So um, if you can't get people to come to the event, then why are you even doing it? And also to fit your budget, to afford these places. There's a thing called a room block, and your room block in my case in 2022, as the room block got bigger and smaller because of COVID, the cost of the meeting space, uh, the bigger your room block, the lower the cost of the meeting space, and vice versa. So that's something to consider. It's better to be safe than sorry. Most places, if you do not fill your room block, which means you tell them you're going to fill 40 rooms and you don't fill 40 rooms, are going to charge you a percentage of what those rooms will cost. So you want to set your room block at a reasonable place. Depending on when you're doing it, and especially where you're doing it, I'm guessing that in uh Minnesota was not everybody's ideal place to go, and 2022 was not the ideal year to be going there. So I would discuss with Anker and kind of the council at large what seems to be a reasonable block, but going over 40 rooms I don't think is reasonable anywhere. It would be nice if we can do it. And if there's no, and obviously the room block is how many rooms they're holding. So you want to encourage people to reserve them, but if you fill the room block and people can still make reservations, even if you fill the room block in general. So other hotel things. What am I forgetting about hotels that the public at large would like to know about hotels?
Sometimes with the hotel, and it varies by the hotel, the room blocks, they might be considering room nights. So like that's important to double check,
Yeah,
because
that's
it
part
may
of it,
not
yeah.
be 40 true rooms. It might be 40 room nights. So someone might have a single room booked, but they have it booked for 4 nights. They would consider that 4 nights.
Yeah.
And the other thing too that's helpful is seeing if you can negotiate, and I'm sure people on this call are aware because of the hotel background, but for other people, they might give you a comped room depending on how many confirmed room nights you have in your room block, which is helpful for keeping guest costs down, because like for 2018 we surpassed our room block and we had enough, I think, for 5 free room nights, which I allocated towards Christy. So we didn't pay for her room, it was comped based on the room nights. So there's ways to get around it. The other thing I would keep in mind is JemCon, or the host, isn't responsible per se financially for the individual hotel rooms, guests, or attendees who are attending JemCon. That's on their own. What is helpful to keep in mind for budgeting purposes is all of the miscellaneous service fees and taxes, and going over that thing with a fine tooth comb, because it more often than not, it's about a 30% fee once you add in taxes and all that stuff. So, but if you work with Anchor and your hotel people and all of that, that's not due all at once. I know that can be kind of an alarming number to look at, but they have it broken out. Usually just a small deposit is due when you sign the contract. So that would just be my call out. And a lot of times it may not be worthwhile to do any kind of food or beverage minimum, just because of the fees, and every hotel is different. Some hotels allow you to bring in outside food, but that was also pre-COVID. So 2023, I really wanted to do something with the hotel, but just financially it was more aggravation than it was worth. So those are things to keep in mind as well, with the hotel.
And also something that we found out the hard way through a bid. uh, Lots of places, especially the higher end places, have a catering minimum. If you are having an event there, you need to pay a certain amount of money in catering. Doesn't matter, they don't care what you're getting, but you're going to pay them $18,000, which was the case in this particular bid we were reviewing. And the person bidding had not accounted for that $18,000, which I don't know how they could have anyway. But it's something to watch out for, especially with the larger and the higher end chains. Specifically ask them, is there a catering minimum? Now that is different than things like, we generally have a cash bar on like Friday and Saturday nights, and that cash bar has a minimum, but that's something we're asking for. That's not something that's required by the hotel. We're just saying, hey, we'd like a cash bar, and they're like, okay, well, minimum $300. So if you don't sell $300, then you have to pay whatever, up to that. We always cover our cash bars, if nothing else. So so yeah, going over the contract with a fine tooth comb and talking to the person. I was very lucky. The DoubleTree person that I had in 2019, we had a meeting and we sat there at a table and went through, and I asked questions, and she, and that's the kind of person you want to be working with. If you are choosing between a hotel, two very similar hotels, and the difference is the person you're working with, absolutely go with the person who will work with you. It will just save you so much sanity in the end. So okay, so hotel. Since we have the bid document, and people can go through that on their own, I don't want to just read through it and it's there, it's available for independent perusal. Let's see. So hotel staffing. The bid document has all sorts of roles in it, and the average JemCon staff, meaning people who work through the year, not necessarily the on-site people. I have a cat invading my computer, and I can't quite reach him yet. So let's just have a fight with the cat. Manners. Well, just be prepared. There's a lot of, one person will do several tasks. So for example, your vendor coordinator and your display coordinator might be the same person. The person who's doing the what's it called, cosplay contest might also be your person who's sewing the fashion. So you don't need to have 35 people on staff. I think the average number is generally between 6 and 8. And sometimes there are just things that the coordinator kind of ends up being the catch-all person. Now, if you can find someone else to be on staff with you to be kind of a co-catch-all person, that's fantastic. If you can get a good assistant coordinator, because you will just find things that need to be done. And some of them, this cat. This is Henry. He's grabbing my keyboard. Sorry about that. So don't look at that list of staff and go, oh my God, I've got to get 30 people. Look for good people who have multiple talents and who are flexible. Now, if you have somebody who has one specific talent who is not flexible, that's fine too. But don't think you have to get 35 people on staff. I will say that if you have fewer than 4 or 5 people, it is going to be hard for you. You really need a little bit of wiggle room with people. So having the coordinator do everything is a really good way to burn out the coordinator.
Can I ask a question about that really quick?
Yeah.
So have you found in the years of JemCon, have you found that sweet spot? Is there a magic number?
My personal view is that 6 to 8 is kind of more than 8, and you get it's hard to meet. It's hard to have a time to meet. Um, Fewer than 6, you kind of tend to get people taking on too much. But it really depends on who you've got. If you've got a lot of very experienced people who are used to doing GemCon specifically, but also other conventions, you can get away with a lot with fewer experienced people. If you're bringing on a lot of new people, which is always a good thing. Um, and I say that with the knowledge that new people are not all equal, but just the effort and making it known to them that they are welcome is a good thing. You if you're down at if you're down at 3 or 4, you really need to know what you're doing. But we have had, I'm trying to think of the biggest staff we had. I don't know. I don't know if we ever had more than like 10 active people, and those were people doing very different proportions of jobs. So it wasn't equally split between all those people. I know that some of the staffs have been very small, and that is kind of stressful. My first staff was very small, and it was stressful. So yeah. So I would say 6 to 8 is probably a good number.
And Damon, just to add on to what Liz said too, I think it's helpful to really round out not so much a specific number, but just people who can help out with things throughout the year versus people who are going to be able to help out in the month or so leading up to it and on site. Because the people who are helping throughout the year might get burnt out leading up to the event. And then the other people who haven't been as involved during the year, that's when you can kind of tag team and then they can come in and like stuff that can only get finalized as you get closer to the event, like the programming schedule. All that gets figured out at the last minute based on the guests. Someone's got to go through and figure out the times and put together the program. And so I think it's more so helpful to have the different buckets of staff, people who are willing to help out with things throughout the year and then on site. The other thing that will really come in handy is having subcommittees. So some years it's been like an all hands staff. We did that like when it was virtual and to have everyone involved, which is great. But then people do have schedules and lives outside of GemCon. And, we do want to be mindful of the time that's being allocated. So for this year, for 2023, I'm just doing subcommittees. So if people want to be included on those things, they can, but like someone just wants to be involved in the fanfic contest, they don't necessarily care what's going on with the fashion, that's fine too. So we have separate subcommittees and meetings going on that are more niche and focused. As it gets closer to the event, there might be like larger staff connects, but in 2018, I made the mistake of wanting to have monthly staff connects with everyone starting like 6 months out. And I got burnt out very quickly. So this time around, we're doing subcommittees and only the smaller groups of people are meeting. And as we get closer to the event, we'll have larger staff connects. But I think it's to Liz's point, it's just really helpful to have those core people in place and knowing where you can delegate certain things.
Yep. And we're certainly not expecting anyone to be an expert people manager and an expert volunteer manager. But one of the things that is different about volunteers is something I learned the hard way, which is they're not employees. And you need to be aware and kind of on the watch for burnout before it happens and try and prevent it, because all of this is supposed to be fun. We're doing this fun thing, and Kat can certainly testify to me being a holy terror about, oh, we've got to do this right, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do this and this. No, don't do that. I'm old now and I regret many things, and being way too intense in the first several years is among my biggest regrets. So take care of your staff. and be mindful of them and their needs. And if you are like me, not a very good people person, it can be very, very useful to make sure that on your staff is someone that you can either check in with to see if you are doing it right as you go, or who can be your people person for you. Um, and excuse me. One of my personal tenets is everybody should be able to have fun. There is some hard work, and there are going to be some times when it's a little intense, but you want to do everything you can to keep your planning ahead of things, so that, for example, you're not just scheduling everything at the end. Getting the schedule started early. Sometimes you're not going to have all of your guests till later, but getting some other people in place, getting like people who are going to teach classes and things like that, who are going to be there, and they're going to be more flexible. So, for example, if you were like, Liz, I want you to teach a knockoff class, you can tell me when I arrive on site when I'm going to teach that class. It doesn't matter to me. So, get stuff done early. It's always better for everybody. Anybody else have insights on being on staff, being a coordinator, working with volunteers, etc.? That's always a good one to just hit people with out of nowhere. But yeah, this is supposed to be fun, and just kind of keep that in mind. And let's see. So staff fashions. The fashion is the fashion is a lot of work, and we often my pet peeve is that we are not always as selective as we probably should be in getting designs, accepting designs for the vote that are way too complex. We have volunteers who have various experiences with making doll clothes, which is very different than making regular human clothes. I've done both. It's just a whole different thing. And so my unasked for advice is, make sure that your person who's running the fashion contest is willing to veto things and say, this design is too complex, we're going to alter it and take out this, and talking to the people who are submitting stuff. Anyway, the main thing about the fashion is get it early, get it started early, get the contest going in like October or even September if you can. Get people sewing by November, December. We still don't have everything done from 2022 because just some horrendous personal emergencies happened with the sewing staff, and it's been very, very unfortunate, but it is hanging over my head every day, and you don't want that happening. You want all your fashions on site first day of JemCon, all done. In fact, you want them 2 or 3 weeks before that so you can get them all packaged and stuff. You can't start the fashion too early. So, and Rachel's talked about, how to find people to sew. There are all sorts of ways, but the main thing to keep in mind when you're doing your planning is start early, get it done early. And even if you aren't in every subcommittee meeting with the fashion people, make sure that you're checking in with your coordinator for status checks. How are things going? Has all the fabric come in? Has everybody got their fabric? Are people sewing? Things like that. Keep an eye on it and make sure that you are ready to offer support of whatever kind you can to make sure that it stays on course, because that fashion will just bite you if you're not careful. But the fashion is also really fun and people really like it, so it's worth the trouble, but it is something to be very careful about.
Davide's got his hand up.
Yes, Davide.
Okay. No, I was wondering, has it ever happened that the people who actually made the outfits are part of the judging panel? So basically, they can put that in consideration already in the voting system, the
That
doability
is,
of the
yeah.
fashion. Has it ever been done?
It has. There have been, and in fact, some, just depending on the coordinators, some of them have been very picky, and those have actually, been great. And then there are some other coordinators who have decided that that complex is good, and it gets overcommitted, basically. We've got something like 8 pieces in this fashion that is not completely distributed to everyone. And we've got like 4 pieces done. And then there's another 4 pieces that all are very fiddly. So you want to emphasize to your coordinator and talk to your coordinator and tell them to basically go simple. It'll just make
Yeah.
everything, and because people who are drawing the entries, very, very few of them, so they're looking at human size fashions and they're putting in 17 bracelets and rings and mitts and belts on everything and ruffle, there's a lot of stuff that you just can't do in doll form at all, and then other things that just are going to take an awful lot of time and an awful lot of skill. And
Because
we
I
don't.
was wondering. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was it. Go.
No. I was wondering if also being part of the voting system might also be more fun for the volunteers to bring them on a little early in the process. Build the excitement. So okay, I'm part of this decision making, and then now I can't wait to help make this
Yep.
outfit. Because just an idea to maybe make it a little easier.
Yeah, that is a very, very good point. So yeah, try and get the fashion team assembled before the voting, and that will also probably help sway the voting towards designs that can be made practically. So okay, so we've talked about hotels, we've talked about the fashions, we've talked about staff. We're getting on toward the end of our hour. What other topics do people feel deserve the most attention?
One quick cliff notes on the fashion. If you're able to split up the individual pieces within the fashion, so like let's say there's a top and then there's pants. One person does all the tops, one person does all the pants, and then that they're consistent. I know some years we've had people like one person does full outfit for only 20 and then someone else does the full outfit for 20, and then there's obviously going to be variations. But if you are able to split it up by pieces, that helps with consistency.
Yep, if you're
That
going to
was,
split it up,
yep,
that's the way to do it.
yep.
Let's see, some areas I'm thinking about: display, programming, charity auction, goodie bags, guests. Which of these is sounding like a good one to cover? And I can stay here as long as anybody wants, so I don't have a schedule, but I don't want to hold everybody, you know. Well, since Rachel's here, Rachel, why don't you talk about guests, since you have the most experience with guests?
Sure. So guests are a really fun part of JemCon. My personal opinion, I think guests make JemCon. People are more inclined to want to go to JemCon once they know who the guests are. I would say the hardest thing is finding who the people are who worked on GEM in some various capacity. We're approaching now, it'll be the 40-year mark in another year or so. This is something that people worked on 40 years ago. Just finding those people. Unfortunately, we've had people who have passed away who are no longer with us. There are some people who are just not interested in coming. It was something they worked on 40 years ago. Thanks, but no thanks. Like, imagine if someone approached you and said, "Hey, can you talk about this paper that you wrote 40 years ago? There's this whole convention and we want to, go over it." Like, GEM was a job for them, even though we love it and we want to honor it. But I would say it is very helpful, and I know Kat can speak to this as well because she hosted in LA. If you're able to find a location where there are guests already in the area, so like for 2008, a lot of the voice actors were local. That really helped keep the cost down. A big part of why I submitted a bid to host again was I moved to Rhode Island for work in 2019, and we're right near Hasbro headquarters. And there's a lot of the original toy people who are still in the area, which will keep guest costs down. Not to throw a number out there, but I think in the bid, or in the lessons learned document, the guesstimate average cost per guest, if I have to throw a number out there, I would just say $850. Some are going to be very low, some are going to be higher. It depends on if there's airfare, hotel, all of that stuff. Some guests are willing to drive. Some guests, we do have some local guests who I'm finalizing right now who live 15 minutes from the hotel, which is awesome. That's going to keep costs down. As far as finding guests and getting them to commit, sometimes it's hard to get them to commit so far in advance. But now it's helpful if you can kind of pace those guests out, or if you can have at least one guest sort of finalized going into the announcement for the next year. I know for 2018, as soon as I found out my bid was accepted, I instantly reached out to Christy Marks and said, "Hey, do you want to come?" She said yes. The contract wasn't finalized just yet, but we had a good faith agreement. And right away, I was able to start including her in the initial postcard art. So as far as finding guests, you would be surprised. Social media is also very helpful. There's a lot of people, just a quick behind the scenes insight. So we've had Stephanie Askander. She is coming back as a featured guest this year. She was a guest in 2018. That was a direct referral from Brian, who's on our staff and has helped out. He got me in touch with her. She's awesome. I posted about her attending Cleveland in a fan group or a girls doll collector group, because she also worked on Rainbow Bright, and I wanted to get additional people to hopefully come to JemCon. Some person just commented on that post in the doll group and said, "Oh, I worked on Gem too." Okay, I contacted that person. It was Ruth Bush, who came in 2019, who worked on some of the posters. She's now given me some additional leads for Rhode Island this year. So it really is a community effort. Everyone's excited. Everyone wants to help out. The main thing I would say to keep in mind with guests, and again, I'm happy to help out with this, is really just to keep in mind that if you do end up hosting, yes, it's your JemCon and you want to put your flair on it, but JemCon is more than just whoever the host is for that year. Ideally, we want to keep it going as long as possible. So it's really important to build a rapport and have a good working relationship with the guests. I think we've done a really great job of that over the years. But to give you an example, we had Sophie for the comics. I really wanted her to come in person in Cleveland. I really wanted a comic person. She wasn't able to commit, but she said she would be a virtual guest. And I stayed on her radar. She had such a great experience just with her virtual session. She agreed to be an in-person guest the next year when we were closer to where she lived. So there's always a way to make it happen. I would say past guests are honestly our best advocate for trying to find new guests. A lot of the guests that I'm exploring now are direct referrals from other guests that we've had, and those guests I found through people on staff. So there's a lot of great ways to get people. The only unfortunate thing I would say is some of the guests or people who were involved in Gem, it's a catch-22. They did go on to work on bigger projects outside of Gem, and now they're really well known in the entertainment space. And GemCon we may not be able to afford them to come in as an in-person guest. But there's also ways around that with virtual sessions and what have you. One of the easiest things you can do, though, great way to get out of the house, look up all of the Comic-Con conventions in your area, put on a Gem shirt, and if someone says, ooh, Gem, boom, you hand them a postcard. That's how I've gotten in touch with some recent comic guests who I'm hoping will be able to make an appearance in Rhode Island this year. Literally just going to events, which a lot of people who are into GemCon probably do anyway. It's just little things like that. Simple as wearing a Gem shirt and having postcards on you. It's simple as that. So I could go on for hours about guests, but it's a big part of the event, big part of GemCon. And there's a lot of every year we try to have at least one new person. And I think we've been able to keep that going. I know we'll have it for this year. But yeah, I think it's just helpful to have a good variety of guests too, not have the same people every single year, have a good variety across the toys, voice actors, what have you. Um, Not to put her on the spot, but Kat, if you were interested in chatting just on hosting, I didn't go to the one in LA, but I know that was very guest heavy as well, but the voice actors. But yeah, no, guests are a very big part of GemCon.
Yeah, definitely the voice actors were, you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the voice actors were one of the main reasons I wanted to do it in LA, and we were really fortunate to be able to get as many voice actors as we could. The biggest thing was just some of the real well-known guys, especially that had gone on to do other things, were really expensive. And, we'd approached people like Charlie Adler, and it was not only kind of a thing that was out of our budget, but we also didn't feel it was fair to pay him that and not the other actors, because we did have people like Michael Sheehan, who came and just didn't ask for anything. So, and then we had, so obviously, Sam was, somewhat, but very affordable compared to what some of the well-known voice actors, that are at conventions all the time kind of want to do or expect in terms of revenue from autographs, etc. Yeah, it was great to have all the guests there, and it was sometimes, I really sometimes love to bring it back to LA and have that, experience, because, we have other conventions out here for, like G.I. Joe and Transformers kind of stuff like that, and they have a lot of reunions with the cast. Yeah, it was, I guess the one thing is you do hear people kind of talk about some of the well-known voice actors that are at a lot of the conventions, and, the expense for bringing them out would probably be more than GemCon could afford. So
I'm hoping we had Sue Blue and Townsend Coleman as virtual guests, and I can't speak for either of them, but I think that having had them as virtual guests and having them introduced to our community, we might find that they are less expensive than they would have been before. And I think with Zoom, because virtual guests before the pandemic were on a phone, and now we've got Zoom, we've got all this stuff. So having a virtual guest is a little more exciting than it used to be. And I think if you've got, a bunch of guests in person, and then you have another virtual guest who maybe can't travel, because they're getting older, we're all getting older. At a certain point, certain people are not going to want to travel anymore, but I think we're still going to want to have them as guests. And so virtual is an option, if need be. And we do have the whole virtual element is going to require someone who is really devoted to planning that. John Henry has been very devoted over the last 3 years. So I don't want to burden him, but he is probably the person with the most experience. He and John have done a lot of that. Um, so so yeah, that's my bit there. That's my guest experience.
There are also, for anyone who might be listening to this later, we do have several confirmed guests in the Florida area who would love to have JemCon come back to Florida. Not to name names, but Ann Bryant and Ellen Bernfeld are in Florida and have flat out said, when is JemCon coming back to Florida? So, for people listening, if you want JemCon to come to Florida, we already have 2 awesome guests ready to go to get you started.
Let's see. So guests, what were the other things? Oh, displays and vendors. They are 2 different things, but they often end up in the same room just because of the way that hotels tend to be built. And they both need tables and space and security. One of the things you want to be looking at when you're choosing spaces, when you're looking at the hotel, you want to make sure that that display and vendor room can be locked. At least one JemCon, it has been set up such that the kitchen staff had a completely unlocked door through that room for their job, which, that's their job. We're not going to complain, but it was just something that was overlooked in the planning. So you want security for that. The more secure you can make the space, the more people will be willing to bring their valuable stuff. And you do kind of want a separate display coordinator and vendor coordinator who can really dig into finding vendors and talking to lots of people about getting the display. When you're the coordinator, that kind of that's the sort of thing you're like, next week I'll work on that, next week I'll work on that, and suddenly it's July. So I would recommend strongly having someone separate doing that kind of work. You don't need particular equipment. It tends to be just tables, but you do want to get that planned.
Oh, just one other thing that I actually ran into this at a dog show. When they planned the dog show, they got their convention space or the ballroom, and it was all set up, but they realized that after getting it set up, that the hotel staff expected them to break down every night so they could host weddings. So make sure that you have, for things that you need to have set up, obviously meeting rooms that are just set up with chairs they can use later on. But it was one of those little things where they realized that they needed that their contract with the hotel was, well, yeah, you can use it during the day, but we're going to have weddings at night. So make sure that that they know that some of the areas that are set up, especially if it's one big room, that the display space is it's going to be permanent for the convention. So it's not going to be something that can be broken to that kind of, which I guess convention, I mean, the hotels that are used to hosting conventions understand that, but sometimes with other convention or with other hotels, they don't always understand that. So I just thought that was kind of funny.
And that's another thing we are kind of unusual. We are a very small convention. So if they have hosted, I don't know, a local like comics or sci-fi convention that's 2,000 or 3,000 people, that's about the closest thing to us, and it's really not the same thing at all. They will not understand about the display room. They will kind of think it's all vendors. Like, where's your trade show? It's your trade show, right? It's your trade show. So you want to kind of make sure that they're not making assumptions about what you're doing. You want to say, on Friday night, we're going to have a mixer where we sit around and play games and have an open bar and just talk and mix. And then on Saturday, we're going to have some dancing, and we're going to have a bar, and we're going to have a costume contest and stuff like that. And the display room is going to be the same thing from Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon. Just go through it, walk through it day by day by day, and let them know specifically what you're doing. It will make everybody's job easier.
We had in 2016, I remember in Albany, there was a model train convention at the
Oh.
hotel the same weekend that we had JemCon, which was really funny because there were a lot of older gentlemen walking around in like top hats and suspenders. And then we had people dressed in cosplay for JemCon. So it was quite a fun ordeal. The other thing I would just add for the display room, we have locked display cases that are property of JemCon. They were bought in 2018 in order to have some prototypes on display. And Davide graciously brought in some of his beautiful custom dolls inspired by the movie. We've had those available on site for the last few JemCons since 2018. For this year, there's a local fan who has a lot of rare stuff. So rather than buying additional display cases, I've been working with the Tourism Bureau to try to find businesses that would be willing to rent additional locked display cases for the weekend. So there's definitely ways to kind of work around it. The other thing I would just caution, every city, state, location is different, but just to be mindful of any vendor forms, fees, etc. So some places are really low key about it, and others, like Rhode Island, is just very weird with forms and tax fees. It's not necessarily something that JemCon has to handle, but just making sure that we're doing our due diligence and posting that information on the site. So if people want to become vendors, we've done our due diligence and shared the requirements with them.
Yep, yep. And you'll get people who are very experienced and who'll be like, okay, I'm in Minnesota. I've got the forms. You don't need to tell me. Like, oh, wonderful North Dakota guy.
Mark.
Yeah, he's a pro. He knows everything. But especially with people who maybe just fans who are selling stuff, they probably aren't going to know a lot of this, and so you want to do the work and let them know so that they don't get zinged. Displays, vendors, guests. Let's see. Oh, pre-GemCon activities are optional, but they're a really good way to give people a chance to get to know each other. They also, by this, it's a two-edged sword. If you have never been to a convention before, the idea of showing up early to run around a city with 30 people that you've never met is very intimidating. So you kind of want to, when you're planning that sort of thing, strike a balance between allowing people to talk and spend time together, but also providing some structure so that people who are a little more hesitant are like, okay, well, we're going to do a tour. That's fine. I can do a tour, on my own. We're going to go to the Mall of America. Okay, if I don't like these people, I can escape into the Mall of America. So that's kind of a balance you want to strike on pre-GemCon activities. Let's see. I made a list of things and I said it out loud, and now I can't remember what else was on it. Charity auction. Selecting a charity. This is kind of, we often try and look at charities that sort of cover the GEM ethos. So assisting foster children, adoption, things like that. In addition to something that fits with the show, like foster children, a lot of us have chosen to go with things that are specific to our attendees, to our GemCon families. So last year, the charity that I chose was the Trevor Project. And so it's really up to you to find something. And we've had some others that were specific to a guest who had a particular interest, specific to the coordinator, that was something that was dear to their heart, that maybe didn't completely match up with the show entirely, but it's very nice if you can talk to those people and see if they can send someone out, or if they can provide you with materials, leaflets, anything like that, just to get people more involved in understanding what the cause is about. I know we've had some nice presentations by people speaking. We had, and forgive me if I can't remember what year it was. I've been to all of them, and I'm 53. We had was it a slide presentation or a video one year? So they often can do a kind of a cool presentation. So that's something to actually contact them. I didn't contact the Trevor Project. I was like, I'm um, we just sent them some money, and that's fine too. But if you can get the people involved, it often can encourage people to donate a little more. And you want to start asking people. I mean, there are people. I can give some names, but I will not embarrass them. There are some fantastic, wonderful people who just show up with stuff for the auction. You don't have to tell them. You don't have to ask them. They just show up. But it is also very useful. You get more stuff if you ask ahead of time and say, "Hey, everybody, think about what you might want to bring to the charity auction." Let's see. Any other topics that have maybe come up in the discussion that would be fun to address? Anything anyone has?
I thought of something else, if I may.
Okay.
So, in your experience, and I know that it's going to evolve as it gets passed from hand to hand. But in your experience with hosting a JemCon, have you ever reached out, or do you reach out to other contacts within your city of different of other cons? Is that helpful?
Yes. In the very first one, I reached out through a web ring to My Little Pony Con that was having an event at the site that I wanted to use. Or I think I actually saw an article about them having a convention there, and I reached out to them, and we posted things across our web rings for each other because it was 2005. It was so long ago. Um, and I also reached out to like the local college radio station, and they were a sponsor. So there are sponsor activities. 2006 was sponsored by Wasabi Anime. Christian was, it was his group. And like Rachel reached out to the Rock Hall in 2018, and that was a whole huge awesome thing. You can I have some other examples, and where are they? They're
Tourism Bureau.
yeah, there's tourism bureaus. There's you can look at, you can reach out for publicity. There's all sorts of ways to do publicity. But for partnerships, I went to a doll show and said, "Hey, we need vendors. Anybody want to come and sell 80s dolls at a show?" And we had one vendor at JemCon 2005. And even with just the one vendor, I was like, "I'm so sorry we didn't have a big crowd for you." And they're like, "Oh, no, we sold plenty." So that's one way to find vendors. And I also, in 2020, when it became obvious that we couldn't have JemCon in person, reached out to some people that I know. My event running started in the early 90s with the Society for Creative Anachronism. And so some people that I've known for decades who also are involved in other conventions in the Twin Cities, I asked them about how they were doing this remote thing, and do you think we could do this remote thing? And so I just worked with people to find out what we needed and how this worked, and get some ideas and some support. So reaching out to people, all sorts of people who can, provide you with services, people who can provide you with publicity, people that you can provide with services. It has been, it's, I highly recommend it, and you can get very creative with it. So
Cross-pollinating with different fan groups is highly encouraged, especially given that a lot of the guests that we'll have worked on other fan groups. So I know it's JemCon and Gem is the main thing, right? But sometimes just for promotional purposes, it's helpful to use that leverage of the guests and letting people know that they worked on other things. So the My Little Pony angle, for example, a lot of the toy people that we'll have this year also worked on My Little Pony. So we have some regular attendees at GemCon who are also involved in the My Little Pony conventions, and they're happy to take postcards and share information. And there are My Little Pony fans who are interested in attending GemCon because they also like Gem, obviously, but they're mainly interested because they want to talk to the toy people. So things like that. It's good to just cross promote, and even in the different fan groups too. Again, on social media. We had someone last year actually, in Minneapolis, someone who attended in 2018 who found out about it because it was shared on a Rainbow Bright Facebook group. She went in 2018, loved it, and then she told her cousin and her sister about it, and then the three of them came together in Minneapolis. So you never know how people are going to find out about GemCon.
Yep. And we as much as we have a reputation, we have a reputation for being a very nice little convention. In 2007, a couple of people that do a podcast came and attended in Chicago, and they did a podcast about GemCon, and it consisted pretty much entirely of everyone was nice, and they didn't pick fights, and they didn't stand in the back of the room and make fun of everybody's opinion, and they didn't do this and they didn't do that. And I'm like, oh, other conventions, oh, oh. But you kind of want to make it known to people that they don't have to be super Gem fans to enjoy coming to GemCon. And that if I often talk on the groups that I'm the worst Gem fan in the world. So, they're don't I don't think anyone here is likely to, but don't scare people off by kind of gatekeeping things and being like, oh, you have to know everything about Gem. We're a fun group, we are a welcoming group, we are a safe group, and encouraging people to stop by. My kid. Encouraging people to stop by and just have fun with some people. Come to the disco. There's always people who show up like for Saturday night, and then are like, I can't believe I missed the rest of the convention. We're going, you can get a lot of people who discover us and want to be part of it, even if they're not the biggest Gem fan in the world. So let's see. Outside world. Yeah, so going back to that bid document, the main thing that it does is give you kind of a framework to be looking at, to set some expectations, and as I said, to let us know that you are kind of on the right wavelength. We get a lot of things that say, bring GemCon to my town, and that is not really how it works. We don't have as we've said, we have some people who are very devoted and who do specific jobs, but we don't have a standing staff that just moves around. It is very much self-generated. If you are interested, speaking to the wider public, if you are really, really interested in bringing GemCon to your town, but you don't think that you have the experience or the talent or something like that, my strong urging is come to GemCon. Just come and attend, see how it works, talk to people, meet people. If you're not ready this year, maybe you'll be ready in 2 years, maybe you'll be ready in 5 years. Maybe you'll meet someone who you're the one with the passion and they're the one with the skills. you know, you build your staff depending on what you need. So you can be the passion if you surround yourself with people who can, you know, specifically have the skills needed to do the work that you don't think you can do. So that's my word of encouragement to the general public who is just like, I want Con in my town, but I can't do it. You probably can, and certainly with the right staff, you can. So just kind of get started and find those people that you need to work with.
For what it's worth, prior to submitting the bid for 2018, the only experience I had was hosting one panel at Albany in 2016. Like that was it. Never on my radar for hosting, but a couple people liked the panel and they're like, you thought about hosting, and the light bulb went off. So the interest is there. There's definitely a way to make it happen. And apologies, Davide, I didn't see your hand was raised.
No, no, I just wanted to add that the same thing is good for people from Europe. I mean, we've read a lot of requests. When are you coming to London? When do you bring it in the UK? Again, you know, it can be done. It's been done in Holland in 2011, and if somebody's watching from Europe and planning to do it or wanting to do it, they think it might be scary. We can figure out, you know, how to for them to um, talk to Stefan and Rob that you know they hosted in Rotterdam in 2011, and you know learn how to host a JemCon in Europe. And there's a lot of requests in the UK. There was somebody interested in hosting in London. Unfortunately, you know, life priorities changed, and I've just learned today that it's not something that can happen in the near future. But hopefully, there's still someone out there that you know in the London area that might want to do it, and they're too scared to do it. That you know it's been done in Europe and it can be done again. And if anything, London should attract even more people. Because the main thing, the biggest challenge to have a GemCon in Europe is that guests will cost more for travel. So in Holland, we only had Christy, which you know she can do a convention herself. It's an amazing guest, but I'm pretty sure that you know again it can be done. So,
Yep. And also in Canada, Canada obviously isn't is quite as scary because you've got, you know, the United States people can generally get there, but we are certainly open to hosting in Canada, in the UK, in Europe. I don't know if we can get to Australia, but we do have some people there. um, um, and for the record, we had like 40 people in Rotterdam, which, you know, it doesn't sound impressive compared to 120 in Manchester, New Hampshire or whatever, but 40 people in Rotterdam was certainly, it was a really good convention, and they went into it expecting lower numbers and planning for that kind of lower number, and so it worked out. Um, you want to, and this is the kind of thing that you talk to the rest of the staff about, depending on your location, um, depending on the cost of the area, something like that. You want to kind of get both an optimistic and a more realistic and then kind of a worst case scenario for running your numbers. You kind of want to gauge to that middle number as what you're probably going to do. But you do want to be aware that worst case can happen. And another thing is GemCon is not a corporation of any kind, profit or nonprofit. So we are not looking to be generating profit. We're looking to break even. We don't want people losing money, but we are not in any way trying to make money. That is not our goal. We have some extra funds on hand for like starting up and stuff through something that happened that was wonderful at 2018. We've got that on hand, but up until that point, we were operating at a loss. We've done some breaking even, but you don't need to. I suppose I should frame this as, you do not need to be planning to make a profit. That is not what we're about. So don't worry about that. But you do want to plan as best you can to break even, so that you're not putting yourself or anyone else in financial stress.
One added perk, though, of hosting is if you pay for the hotel with your credit card, even though you get reimbursed by JemCon, you get the bonus points on your credit card. So that's one way to kind of reimburse yourself for all of the labor of love throughout the year with anything you put on your card. Obviously, you get to keep the miles or points or what have you, even if JemCon's reimbursing you for it.
And generally what happens financially is that you will pay initially, and then JemCon will reimburse you, and Anker is very good at doing that quickly. And as Rachel said, the hotel is generally parceled out in bits and pieces throughout the year, so that makes it more manageable.
And same thing too with the guests, for that matter. Like, you don't have to pay for the guests up front. You're only going to be paying those expenses as you get closer to JemCon and you're booking the airfare and booking the hotel, and you do get reimbursed from JemCon for it. But it is good just financially to kind of plan out rough expenses for what you think it'll cost to get them to come.
And as happens, at the very beginning, JemCon doesn't have the people are paying for registration and stuff throughout the year, and so the funds come in, and then we can reimburse from those funds that are coming in. So as time gets closer to the event, there's going to be a little more money on hand because people are registering at the last minute and stuff like that. So that's generally what's happening with that. Let's see, anything else that we have not covered that I really wanted to cover? I haven't covered a lot of things that are in that bid document, like theme and explaining why you want to host JemCon and what makes your area great, because those are the easy things. Those are the things that you're going to have on hand and just right off the top of your head. You're going to find that various elements of the bid document and the planning are things that are really fun for you. I was like, oh, I get to do pre-JemCon activities, and I just jumped all over that. You're going to find some other things that are not so exciting and not so much fun. And we do have help available in pretty much every department. Anker has records of pretty much all of the JemCons. What have things cost? Specifically, what have the JemCons needed? Rachel mentioned the postcards. Postcards are kind of a not insignificant chunk of money, not the biggest bill in the world, but it's not pocket change. And knowing that you've got to have that is important to your budget. Printing, mailing, things like that. You're aware of the hotel. You're aware of maybe some stuff for goodie bags. You're aware of the guest costs, but there's a lot of other little stuff that you want to be aware of, and Anker is very good at pointing that kind of stuff out. And anyone who has hosted can also point that kind of stuff out. So if you need help with scheduling, we've got people who like to schedule. If you need help with planning content, we've got people who love to teach classes and who have been to a lot of classes and they might like to see again, so they can give you some good ideas. We do have, basically the idea is there will be someone who can help with any aspect of that bid. If you don't know who those people are, just send us an email at jemconforever@gmail.com and we will hook you up. We have a YouTube channel, which obviously if you were watching this on YouTube, you know about that. If you're curious about JemCon, we have all sorts of videos from many years. And I encourage you to watch some of those, see the kind of guests we have, see the kind of people we've got, see the kind of things we do, see my cats disrupting every session for the last 3 years. And any final questions or closing statements or anything like that that people really want to get out there to the world?
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yep. Yep. My final statement is just don't be afraid. You know, be thoughtful and be aware of risks, but this is a really fun thing. It is a really good thing. Our community is just astounding to me. I look at myself and the human being I am, and I'm like, how in the world, um, how did these people congregate around something I thought up? What the heck? JemCon is bigger than any one person, and it is just a wonderful thing. And we want it to go. And that's the other thing. If you are worried about your bid not being good enough or not being complete or something, we will work with you. We'll say, hey, you didn't include this. So here's why this is important. And here's a person to work with. We want bids to succeed. We are not, we're not going to be picky just to be picky. We want everything to be good, and we want everybody to have a good time hosting. So, so bid, if the worst that can happen is that we say, this is a very good bid. We think maybe you should try again next year. We're going to choose a different bid this year. And that's really not such a bad thing, because that gives you a whole nother year to think about what you're doing. And it would be quite a luxury to have multiple bids to choose from, because for most of the time we have one bid, and we say, okay, here's our bid, how can we make this work? And it has worked. Just I'm thinking of all sorts of weird metaphors that don't work, like guns a-blazing. That's not it. It's worked like gangbusters every year. Every single year, JemCon has been a wonderful success. And you know, we'll make it happen, and you will make it happen, and it will be fun. So